Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today our lecture would be about Chittaja Kalapas. So if I recap what we have done so far during this phase of the lectures. So we have explained the Chittaja Rūpas, the last. We have explained the Chittaja Rūpas. We explained what the Chittaja Rūpas are. And then especially we focused on what are the Chittas that produce Chittaja Rūpas. What are the Chittas that have the capacity to produce Chittaja Rūpas, and we got the number according to the Theravada teachings, that was 75 Chittas, excluding 10 Vijnana and the 4 Arupa Vipakas. They never produce Chittaja Rūpas. Even the 75 produces Chittaja Rūpas while they appear in the Panchavokara realm. And we excluded while performing them, for some of them performing Patisandhi function and Chutti function, both Patisandhi and Chutti. Commentary is of the opinion that only the Chutti Chitta of Arahants do not produce Chittaja Rūpas, but this Mula Tika is of the opinion that all the Chutti Chitta of every being does not produce Chittaja Rūpas, and Lady Sayadaw also supports that idea. Anutika had an opinion that all the last 17 consciousnesses of a life does not produce Chittaja Rūpas, but Paramata Dipani is not very appreciating this idea because it cannot be perfectly confirmed because of some reasons. Then, so that was the, and also we talked how the Chittaja Rūpas are produced by a Chitta. The main, actually it's not the Chitta, only the Chitta that produce Chittaja Rūpa, but all the Chitta Chesikas, the cluster, the entire cluster. Within the cluster even, the 5 jhana factors are the biggest contributor for the Chittaja Rūpas to arise. And we said Chitta and Chetana both are responsible. In the entire mental cluster is responsible according to Patthana, but out of them Chitta and Chetasika play a huge role. But even Chitta and Chetasika are capable of producing Chittaja Rūpa only when they are supported or strengthened by the jhana factors. Then we moved on to explain why Patisandhi Chitta and Chutti Chitta do not produce Chittaja Rūpas, because they are lacking the support of a strong base. And then we also moved into explain the entire lecture why Chittaja Rūpas are not produced in Arupa realm, because of lacking of some other necessity factors. The most prominent in that regard was the absence of a Kammaja process that has already started from the Patisandhi moment. So for Chittaja Rūpas to happen, it's not only the Chitta Chetasikas, but also there should be a Kammaja Rūpa process that has been already existing. So that was missing in Arupa realm, that is missing in Arupa realm. So Arupa realm does not have Chittaja Rūpas. It doesn't have any Rūpas at all. Then we moved on to explain what the Chittaja Rūpas are. So last week's lecture was that we mainly focused on that to the fact that Chittaja Rūpas are not produced only in the surrounding area where the Chitta arises. Chitta arises in the heart. All the Chittas that produce Chittaja Rūpas must arise in the heart base. Chittas that associate other bases or does not associate any base do not produce Chittaja Rūpas. So it is already related to the heart base. But Chittaja Rūpas are not arising, mind-born matter is not arising only around the heart base. It arises in the entire body. Though Chitta is depending on a heart base, it affects the entire body. That is one of the major functions of Chitta. Even Chittaja Rūpas can be found arising at the root of hair. Then another thing that I gave a full handout that because last week I couldn't give 2 weeks I couldn't give a handout. Everything is now completed in the handout I distributed yesterday night. If you go to 2.168, page number 3, 2.168. Chitta Samuttana, another term for Chitta Rupa is Chitta Samuttana. It is a term used to refer to realities produced by mind. Even Chetasikas can be called Chitta Samuttana, but at the same time, Chitta Rupas are called Chitta Samuttana. Chitta Samuttana. According to Theravada Abhidhamma, there are 15 Chitta Rupas, 8 Avinibhoga, Saddha Rupa, Paricheda Rupa, 2 Vinyati Rupas, and 3 Vikara Rupas. So these are the 15 Rupas that are produced by Chitta Rupas. Now we move on to the clusters, which is also a very interesting topic. And then next day, most probably we'll move on to Chittaja Santatis and some capacities of Chittaja Rupas. That is also a quite interesting topic. So today's lecture would be about Chittaja Kalapas. Chittaja Kalapas. Chittaja Kalapas. We have 8 types of Kalapas produced by Chitta. 8 types of Kalapas. Then we are going to categorize them into few sections. Kalapas with Vikara Rupa, like Lahuta, Muduta, Kamanyata. Kalapas with Vinyati. Kalapas with Vinyati. Kalapas with sound and the other Kalapas. So we are going to categorize them into 4 groups. With Vikara, right? Then with Vinyati, with sound, and the remaining. We are going to categorize these 8 into 3 sections, right? But at the same time, they are overlapping. But I want to emphasize some important features of these things, right? Now, first we need to know what are the 8 Kalapas. What are the Chittaja Kalapas? Kalapas means cluster of Rupas. We know that according to Theravada teachings, any Rupa arises as a cluster. Any Rupa arises in a cluster, not separately. That is a very fundamental function, characteristic of all conditioned realities. No conditioned reality arises alone. No conditioned reality arises alone. The reality that remains alone is Nibbana, unmixed with anything. All the realities are mixed. Mixed means avinibhoga, cannot be separated. Cannot be separated. This idea of vinibhoga and avinibhoga shall be discussed in the later stages of the Rūpa chapter. And also it is a very important notion with regard to eliminating the wrong view of a doer, because a wrong view of self. If you look into the Nidana Sutta, Mahanidana Sutta, so when the Buddha wanted to eliminate the idea of a self, of Vedana being considered as the self, Vedana has been considered as the self, the thing is either you have to consider Vedana, self as Vedana, or self as something other than the Vedana. When we consider self as something other than the Vedana, there are 2 options. It is either Vedana and self are connected with each other, inseparable but 2 different realities. That is called avinibhoga nana bhava. Now it means 2 different, self and Vedana are 2, but they are inseparable. Inseparable means when one passes away, the other has to pass away. If one arises, the other also has to arise. So they have the same arising, same passing away. That is called avinibhoga. They cannot be separated. Then the next is vinibhoga. Vinibhoga difference is self and Vedana are different, but they can exist without each other. Without each other means they are separable. They are separable. So that was the 3 options, 3 arguments the Buddha brought in, and he said none of them matches the reality. So there is no self according to him. Then the same thing can be brought regarding identifying self, sanya as the self, chetana as the self, and vijnana as the self. So this idea of avinibhoga means they cannot be separable. They cannot be separable means they have the same arising, they have the same passing away. They have the same arising and same passing away. And they do not share these characteristics of the same arising and passing away. That is called, if they do not possess, that is avinibhoga. Avinibhoga means they are inseparable. They share the same arising, same passing away. So in a kalapa, all the rupas have the same arising and same passing. It's not that the Patavi has a separate arising and Apo has separate arising. No. They are connected with each other inseparably. Right? So that is called avinibhoga. So in kalapas, every kalapa we have avinibhoga 8. Every kalapa has avinibhoga 8. And kalapa itself is an avinibhoga entity. Avinibhoga entity. The entire kalapa is avinibhoga. So we have 15 chittaja rupas. Fifteen chittaja rupas. They are 4 great elements. Then Varna, yes, Gandha, Rasa. Here we have 9 altogether, 9. Then we bring in Paricheda. Paricheda Rupa is Akasa Dhatu. Paricheda is Akasa. We have 2 Viññati. We shall discuss about them during the Chittaja Rupa chapter, right? Section. 2 Viññati. 3 Vikara. 3 Vikara. Now these are the 15. Out of them, these last 3 are Anippanna. Means they are not real Rupa. They are not real Rupa. Right? So in a kalapa, now another point, components of a kalapa. When we say the components of a kalapa, we only take Nippanna Rupa. Only the Nippanna Rupa, concretely produced matter, are components of kalapa. Nippanna. But while we are naming the kalapa, now this problem didn't occur in Kammaja kalapas. Because all the Kammaja kalapas have Nippanna Rupas only. Nippanna Rupas only, Nippanna Rupas. Out of the 18 Kammaja Rupas, there was a Paricheda Rupa. So we separated it. We said Paricheda Rupa is the gap between the 2 kalapas. So it is not a part of the kalapa. So we can also not consider when you are thinking about the kalapas, but when we say the rupas produced by chitta, we do count Paricheda Rupa, because now imagine these are the chittaja kalapas produced by the mind. So when they are produced, we can see a gap between these kalapas. So this gap which was already existing, we consider as to be caused by the chitta, because this is the gap between kalapas. So when the kalapas are produced by a certain cause, their gap was also considered to be produced by that relevant cause. But actually in the ultimate sense, the empty space has been existing before everything. Space has been existing. There is no beginning in the space according to teachings. Now we don't need to worry about Paricheda Rupa. But Viññati and Vikara Rupas are found in the kalapas. We do name the kalapas based on these Viññati and Vikara. In the Kammaja kalapas, we didn't have this problem, because always the Nippanna Rupas were in there. Now from Chittaja kalapas onwards, we find Anippanna Rupas in it. But we have to keep in mind, though we name the kalapa based on whether the Viññati or Vikara are existing in that. Now in a short moment you will see, when we name the kalapas, we name based on the Viññati and Vikara as well. But it is not to consider, it should not be considered that, should not be understood that these are components of kalapa, not anga. They are not anga. Anga means they are not the constituting parts. Because one more thing, Viññati, now these rupas have 17 mind moments. lifespan. 17 mind moment lifespan. Viññati just have one mind moment lifespan. What is the characteristic of vinibhoga, avinibhoga? They have the same arising, they have the same passing away. It means they have the same arising and passing away. Means surely they are arising and passing away together, right? Obviously. So, there can be two realities that arise and pass away together, but does not share the same arising. This is a very subtle point. Think about Chitta and Chittaja Rūpa. We have already discussed Chitta produced Chittaja Rūpa. Chitta produced Chittaja Rūpa. Chittaja Rūpa at its arising moment. They arise simultaneously. At the same time. At the same time, according to teachings. But they have different arising. So arising together means at the same time, when in terms of locality, it means in terms of time, temporality, in the temporal sense, not local, temporal sense. So though they arise at the same time, it is not necessary that they share the same arising. Same arising is found in a cluster which is inseparable. Now, in a cluster of Rupa Kalapas, we will later find out, two Viññati disappears while the Kalapa is still existing. Kalapa rises together with the Chitta, while it remains for 17 mind moments, the Viññati disappears. If Viññati is taken as a component of the Kalapa, then it is not it cannot be termed as a avinibhoga, because avinibhoga means arise together and passes away together. Viññati disappears. Viññati is not found after one mind moment. So Viññati, Paramattha Dipani states that Viññati and Vikara Rupas are not part of the Kalapa, since they are not real Rupa. Though we name the Kalapa based on their existence in it. They are just certain changes or certain features found in the Rupa or in the Kalapa. They are not real Rupa. Another thing, I shall be discussing this. I have already discussed it in the Kalapa lectures briefly. When we in future also, when the occasions comes, I may emphasize on this fact. Now these are the components of Kalapa, but when we name the Kalapa, except the Paricheda Rūpa, we take the remaining 14. You will see that each Kalapa is named, these 14 are found, right? So these 8 are called Avinibhoga. Then we have Saddha, 2 Viññati and Vikara. These are the 14 Rupas that are found in material clusters produced by the mind and mentalities. Chittaja Rūpa are the clusters, Chittaja Kalapas, I beg your pardon, Chittaja Kalapas are the clusters of Chittaja Rūpas. Clusters of Chittaja Rūpas. They arise and pass, every cluster arises and passes away together. Now we move on to Chittaja Kalapas. In order to make it easier, I will draw all the Rupas here, write down. 8 Avinibhoga. By now, most of you are familiar with Avinibhoga. The 8 inseparable Rupas, 4 great elements, color, taste, smell and the nutriment. Then we have sound, Saddha, not DDHA, not the Saddha, the faith, this is Saddha. Then we have 2 Vikara, 2 Viññati, because we take out Paricheda, then we have 3 Vikara. Altogether 14. Now with these 14, we are going to make the Chittaja Kalapas. First we should know, it's easy to separate them into two groups. What are these 2 groups? Without Vikara and with Vikara. Vikara are 3 Rupas. We shall learn them at the end of the or Aharaja Rūpa section, at the end of the Aharaja Rūpa section. Normally in books we introduce them first whenever we find them. But actually, since Vikara Rūpas are found in nutriment-borne matter Kalapas and mind-borne Kalapas and Utu-borne Kalapa, then after studying them, it's easy to explain it. Now, Saddha Rūpa, though it arises with Chitta, it can also be produced by Utu. So, at the end of the Utuja chapter, I will be discussing about Chitta Saddha, not in the Chittaja Kalapa chapter. Right? So, now, with and without. So, we have 4 each. 4 each. Now, Vikara, we don't need to worry about Vikara. What we are doing is, we get 4 Kalapas here and the same 4 Kalapas with Vikara. Right? With Vikara. So, what is the first? 8 Avinibhoga. 8 Avinibhoga. Only the 8 Avinibhoga. We call it Oja Attamaka. Oja Attamaka. Oja Attamaka. Right? Their 8th Rūpa is Oja. Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo, Vanna, Gandha, Rasa, Oja. The nutriment element. It's better to study them in Pali rather than putting them into English. Then what happened? We may have 8 Avinibhoga plus out of 2 Vinyati, Kaya Vinyati. We have studied their names, not in detail. Kaya Vinyati. This is 9. We call it Kaya Vinyati Navaka. A cluster of 9 Rūpas together with Kaya Vinyati. 8 plus 1. We can find this when we are making deliberate bodily movements. With our own effort, not while we are being pushed by someone, right? It's while we are making deliberate attempts. Then we have 8 Avinibhoga plus Saddha. This is called Saddha Navaka Kalapa. Saddha Navaka Kalapa. 9 Rūpas together with Saddha. 9 Rūpas together with Saddha. This Kalapa is not explained in Abhidhammatta Sangha. We find this in our commentarial explanation, especially in Visuddhimagga. In Abhidhammatta Sangha, the ones who have studied Abhidhammatta Sangha would know that there are only Chittaja Kalapas, 6 Chittaja Kalapas. Oja, then we have sound, Saddha. But here I have given it as 8. Why is that? Because Saddha Navaka, 8 Avinibhoga plus sound produced by Chitta is not explained in the Abhidhammatta Sangha. But it is found in many other places in the commentaries, especially while explaining the Vipassana practice. It is found mostly in Asasa Passasa, while breathing. Breathing always produces certain sound. And that sound is considered to be mind-born. Mind-born. And this doesn't have any vignati. Paramattha Dipani also states this point and emphasizes that there are 8 kalapas, 8 chittaja kalapas. Then we have, while we are making deliberate meaningful sounds, we have 8 avinibhoga, 1 saddha, and vachi vinyati. That is 10 rūpas. That is called vachi vinyati saddha. We call it vachi vinyati saddha vachi vinyati saddha dasaka kalapa. 10 rūpas with vachi vinyati and sound, including the 8 avinibhoga. Then what happened? All these 4, now we have 4 groups of kalapa, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 groups of kalapa. We add the 3 vikara into them. 3 vikara. Then we get another 4 types of Rūpa kalapas. So 8 become 11. We call it Lahutadi Ekadasaka kalapa. Kalapa. Ekadasa is 11. Kaya Vinyati Lahutadi Dwadasaka kalapa. Dwadasaka kalapa. Because 9 plus, here we have 8 kalapa, 8 rupas. 9, 9, 10. 11, 12. So 9 plus 3 is still 11. But the combination is different. Saddha Lahutadi Dwadasaka. Dwadasaka is 12. Dwadasaka kalapa. Then we have, here we had Saddha Vachi Vinyati, and it includes, now when Vikara is added, Saddha, sorry, Vachi Vinyati Saddha, right? Vachi Vinyati Saddha Lahutadi Terasaka kalapa. Kalapa. These are the 8 Chittaja kalapas. I have listed them in the handout. Right? So now what we are doing is, these are the 8. Now these kalapas arise in our body with the minds, 75 minds, while they are arising in the Panchavokara realm, except in the moments of Patisandhi and Chuti. Now we move on to categorize them. Now look at this. Now we are going to categorize Chittaja kalapas with vikara. We have 4. Then Chittaja kalapas with sound. How many do we have? Here we have 2. Here we have 2. Another 4 is there. 4 are there. With sound. How about the Chittaja kalapas with vinyati? We have 1 vinyati here and another here. So with vikara we have another 4. So we have 4 kalapas with vikara, 4 kalapas with sound, 4 kalapas with vinyati, and then for the remaining kalapas are Oja Attamaka and Lahutadi Ekadasaka. Without vinyati, without virati, or without vinyati, without virakara, and without sound. Right? So now we are going to understand some important factors about each group. Chittaja kalapas with vikara. Chittaja kalapa with vikara. Chittaja kalapas with vikara. Vikara rupas are very supportive to the body. Lahuta, Muduta, Kamanyata. They are the lightness, softness, and the adaptability of the four great elements. They are not separate realities. And more these rupas arise, bodies tends to be healthier and very comfortable, like very easy to be used. So therefore, these are when they are found, our body is functioning properly. If you move on to paragraph 2.172 in page number 4, out of the 8 clusters mentioned about, 4 kalapas that contain rupasa lahuta, rupasa muduta, and rupasa kamanyata are suppurative to the proper functioning of the body. Among them, these rupas are mostly produced by lobha mula chittas kusala chittas and kiriya chittas. Right? Arise. Not mostly means normally they arise due to, I have given it, they arise due to lobha mula chittas. 8 lobha mula are there, right? Then 8 kusala chittas and 8 maha kiriya chittas. And this also includes appana, kusala and kiriya, right? The third line I have elaborated this point, right? Just understand this kusala and kiriya, good chittas. So even with lobha they arises, and it is also seen out of them the somanasa chitta, somanasa lobha, somanasa mahakusala, somanasa kiriya do support them greatly. When our mind is very happy, we later learn piti sometimes makes the body to levitate even. In fact, lahuta mudita found in chetasikas also affects the body. We can see when listening to a good dhamma, the body, the sickness, some arahants got recovered from certain sicknesses. When the mind is happy, the body is light. So that's why we ask to be happy always, right? So it's very important. Even with the lobha mula chitta, but not with grace, strong lust, no. Sometimes too much of lust will make chitta, rupas to be burned. But certain love towards parents, sometimes towards children, pleasant rupas do arise. So that's why normally doctors would say, be happy, smile always, right? It would make your body healthier in that sense. So in Abhidhamma point of view, lobha mula chittas do, that is not to encourage to have lobha mula chittas, please consider this, I am not encouraging that. So that is the natural thing, right? That I am talking about the effects. Now imagine if lobha mula chitta was detrimental to the body. If it is really detrimental to the body, like dosa mula chittas, no one would arouse lobha, right? Why do we like lobha? Lobha is pleasant to the mind, at the same time it's pleasant to the body in some sense. Normally we say, don't make me angry. Why is that? We ourselves know when anger arises, our mind is burning, and even it affects the body. That's why we say, don't make me angry. Because we also know its bad effects. So therefore, lobha mula chittas are contributing to this lahuta, mudita and kamanyata. Then the number 2, it seems that these 4 types of kalapas are never produced by dosa mula and moha mula chittas. No, even moha mula chittas. The entire body also gets affected. It's not very calm at that time. When we have a strong doubt or restlessness, especially when anger arises, the body becomes heavier. Heavier means it's yes, sometimes we do run fast and so forth when adrenaline comes up. When some animal is chasing away, we'll be running like Usain Bolt, like so fast. Because when someone animal is chasing, some people tend to say they had more skills while someone is attacking or chasing them. Even they could jump heights that they would never ever think of jumping, right? When the fear of death comes. Yes, that is something else. But in this regard, dosa mula, it's obvious in most of the cases, dosa mula, moha mula is not supportive to the body. Then all appana chittas except 2 abhiññāna chittas possessing psychic powers. Now in the appana chittas are the chittas that are rupa, arupa and lokuttara. Leaving apart the kamavachara chittas, the jhana chittas, lokuttara chittas. Out of the lokuttara chittas, jhana chittas, we have 2 chittas called abhiññāna. Abhiññāna, there are 7 types of abhiññāna, mainly 5. Out of them, there is one thing called iddhividha. Iddhividha, by which we perform psychic power. Sometimes they levitate, travels in the air, sinks into the earth, go through some physical objects. So these iddhividha do make physical movements. When we are making a physical movement, viññatti arises in our body. Rupas with kalapas with viññatti. this second type of kalapa, with vikara and without vikara, when we are making bodily efforts, right? So now leaving apart these two viññati, abhiññāna, right? All the other occasions, right? And four arupa vipaka chittas. So leaving apart these two iddhivida, if you exclude these iddhivida and the remaining abhiññāna and arupa vipaka, who never produce chitta rupa. So leaving apart this abhiññāna and arupa vipaka, remaining appana chittas, they are very calm. Appana is always calm. Therefore, it is correct to formulate a fundamental that these mentioned chittas only produce chittaja lahutadi ekadasaka kalapa. What does it mean? Chitta lahutadi ekadasaka. If you look into the board, you can see chitta lahutadi chittaja lahutadi ekadasaka. This one, lahutadi ekadasaka. Because it's serene, they don't produce the normal chittaja kalapas. Because they are serene, very high states of mind. They produce always lahutadi kalapas. Then, except abhiññāna, iddhivida abhiññāna, they do not make bodily movements. So, these kalapas are also not found there, right? And they do not utter sound. Then finally, since they are not making any verbal things. So, it is correct to formulate a fundamental that all the appana chittas except iddhivida abhiññāna and arupa vipakas only produce lahutadi ekadasaka. Normally we don't go into such depth while studying chitta rupas. But when you bring up all the fundamentals, it seems like, to my opinion, it is okay to consider the appanas leaving apart two iddhivida and arupa only produce lahutadi ekadasaka. Why did we exclude the oja attamaka? Because those chittas are very serene. Serene chittas normally produce lahutadi kalapas only. Then they do not make bodily movements. So these are not found. They do not utter sounds. So the last four kalapas are also not found. Right? So in the end, we are left with these kalapas regarding appana chittas. Because when you are in an appana state, you are not making any bodily movements. It's a very solid state. Right? So regarding kalapas with vikara, we have three fundamentals. They are mostly produced by lobha-mula, kusala and kiriya chittas. It seems like they are never produced by dosa-mula and moha-mula chittas. And all the appana chittas except iddhivida abhiññāna and for arupa, only the lahutadi ekadasaka are produced by these chittas, right? So this is when we bring all the fundamentals together, it seems these are possible. Formulating these are possible. Now we come chittaja kalapas with viññati. What are the chittaja kalapas with viññati? We have 2, 4. We name them as 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8 with viññati are 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Chittaja kalapas with viññati. 2, 4, 6, 8. Chittaja kalapas with vikara were, yes, what are they? 5, 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 8. Right? So what are these? Now with viññati. Viññati arises while we are making bodily and verbal actions. Out of them, 2 and 6. 2 and 6 contains kaya viññati. 4 and 8 contains vachi viññati. Kaya viññati is for bodily movements. Vaci viññati is for uttering words, meaningful words. Right? So, what are the fundamentals? While we are making deliberate physical movements, Chittaja Rūpas with Kaya viññati arise in us. Chittaja Rūpas with Kaya viññati arising us accordingly. So, these bodily movements. Why is that? When we do it with a serene mind, Chittaja Rūpas with Lahuta arise. When we do it with defiled minds or lower minds, Chittaja Rūpas without Vikara arises, without Lahuta. So this is with Lahuta, this is without Lahuta, this is with Lahuta, this is without Lahuta. Right? So based on the nature of the mind, whether the Lahuta exists or not is found. That's the fundamental. When the mind is good, mind is calm, serene, wholesome, or when it is pleasant, even with low mula chitta, Lahuta arises in kalapas. Right? So bodily movements we get kalapas with viññati. When we are uttering words, speaking, we may get all 4 types of kalapa accordingly. Why is that? While speaking, we have to move the body, especially the mouth, tongue, the vocal area. So these are physical movements. Physical movements always requires bodily intimation, kalapas with kaya viññati. So therefore, kalapas with kaya viññati, and while we are uttering the words, how the sound is articulated is decided by the vaci viññati. So all 4 accordingly are found while we are speaking. If the mind is pleasant, we may get 4 and 8. If the mind is not very pleasant, 2 and 4, because this contains kaya viññati, vaci viññati, vaci viññati. So if it is not pleasant, kaya and vaci are without Lahuta. If pleasant, with Lahuta. Right? So that's what is mentioned. If you go to the numbers 2.173, there are 4 Chittaja Kalapas with Viññati Rūpas. When making deliberate physical movements, Rūpa Kalapas with Kaya Viññati, bodily intimation arises. While uttering out meaningful sounds, we make movements in the mouth and vocal areas with Rūpa Kalapas containing Kaya Viññati, and the intended sound arises in Rūpa Kalapas together with Vaci Viññati. So both the Kalapas are found while we speak. Then Chittaja Kalapas with Saddha Rūpa. Kalapas with Saddha. Chittaja Kalapas with sound, Saddha. If we go into the chart, what are the Kalapas with sound? 3, 4, 7, 8. 3, 4, 7, 8. 3 and 4 without virati, vikara. 7, 8 is with vikara. Without vikara, with vikara. So now, in these rupas, right, in these Vijita Kalapas with Saddha Rūpa, now we can analyze them. If you look into the chart, we will find this contains Saddha, this contains Vaci Viññati plus Saddha. The same here. Without Vaci Viññati and with Vaci Viññati. Vaci Viññati is found when we are making meaningful words, uttering meaningful words, when we want to convey a certain message. The Vaci Viññati arises in it, together with Saddha. But there are other occasions that we deliberately bring up sounds, but which has no meaning, conveying any meaning. The most prominent among them is breathing, as mentioned in Visuddhimagga. While we breathe, breathing is a Chittaja act. It always has sound. That's why when you listen carefully, when we breathe, there is always a sound going on. Another Chittaja sound without Viññati is while we cry. While we cry. Sometimes when we cry, laugh, the Paramattha Dipani says some other vomiting, while vomiting, hiccups, spitting, sneezing, right? And also we can include snoring. So all these are chittaja sounds without viññati. Chittaja sounds without viññati. When we utter words, so when we utter words, we get kalapas with viññati, that is 4 and 8. 4 and 8. When we are making just sounds without any meaning, we get 3 and 4. But existence of vikara depends on the status of the mind, right? So out of the 4, there are 4 chittaja kalapas that have sound in them. Out of the 4, when speaking out meaningful sounds, 2 kalapas with vachi viññati arise accordingly. That is already discussed. These kalapas arise in animals as well while they communicate with each other. Sounds do arise on occasions such as while breathing, sneezing, spitting, vomiting, hiccuping, snoring, crying and laughing. According to Theravada, these are non-verbal sound, avachimaya saddha. Hence are called avachimaya saddha. Avachimaya saddha. On such occasions, only 2 chittaja sound kalapas arise accordingly with vikara or without vikara. It doesn't contain vachi viññati. So this is the kalapa that is missing in Abhidhammatta Sangha under the Chittaja Rūpa section. This is the kalapa that is missing, right? That is missing. Okay, I couldn't give you the references in the. I'll try to provide it because it's found in the Paramattha Dipani. This sentence, right? That I have taken it from Paramattha Dipani. Then there is another point. Ancient commentaries had an idea about vitakka vipara saddha. It's another point. Vitakka vipara saddha. Vitakka vipara saddha. I shall talk about them in a different lecture. Now, what is vitakka vipara saddha? Sometimes we keep on thinking about something very deeply, and think about some argument with someone or something. Then suddenly what happens? We say something, we are arguing with that person now. And we uttered some words. While we are deeply into the thought, our vitakka produces some sound. Normally, if you are with a certain friend who is having such a deep thought, deep means pondering on something, and suddenly he says something, we feel, what did you say? Did you make any sound, something like that? Because we hear like sometimes they are saying something. Or maybe they speak out in their minds, like they make a sound, but it is not heard by others. So these are called vitakka vipara saddha. Vitakka vipara saddha. The ancient commentators had to the idea, such sounds are not heard by others. Such sounds are not heard by. But I think practically sometimes we may hear some mumbling, no? Sometimes some person mumbling. So maybe he's heard. So Buddha Thera denied this idea. He said, no, there is no sound that is not heard by sota viññāna. So I shall give you a detailed explanation about this fact in another lecture when it comes to a certain topic. Right? I have already prepared the material for that in Sinhalese. I shall translate it and give it to you. So ancient commentaries held on to an idea about sound kalapas that are uttered by beings but are devoid of vachi viññati and are not captured by the sota viññāna. So 2 factors. Devoid of vachi viññati, not captured by sota viññāna, but contains sound. It contains sound, no viññati, is not heard by sota viññāna. Such sound is called vitakka vipara saddha. Please underline, vitakka vipara saddha. I shall explain that later about these 2 opinions. The Pali commentary on Dhammasangani rejects this notion which was found in the ancient commentaries. Right? So this is a special kind of a Rūpa. There's an argument on it. We'll talk about that later. Right? Then now this. Now later on, after we finish this now, immediately we'll try to find out how useful this categorization was in our day-to-day life. In Abhidhamma perspective. The remaining kalapas. Remaining chittaja kalapas. What are the remaining chittaja kalapas? With now we talk about with vikara, with viññati, with sound. Now with viññati, with vikara, with vikara is this side. With viññati is kaya viññati 2 and vaci viññati 2. With sound sound 2 kalapas and sound and with sound and vaci 2 kalapas. So what the remaining kalapa is this one. Right? This one. This one. So this kalapa remaining, and then I also added the ekadasaka kalapa. These two types of kalapas, it includes the, actually what I wanted to emphasize is this one also. These two, right? It also contains lahuta, right? These two. These two kalapas arise in the body of living beings while not making deliberate physical movements and not uttering sounds. They don't contain sound, they don't contain viññati. Without viññati, without sound, right? So these kalapas arise accordingly while meditating without moving the body and while sleeping without making any bodily movements or snoring. Right? While we are standing still or sitting still without doing anything or meditating, these two kalapas arise. These two kalapas arise. Right? However, it should be noted that chittaja kalapas with sound arise while breathing. Since we are breathing all the time, even though we don't make movements, we are breathing, right? But it's not breathing is happening in every millisecond. No. So while we are breathing, it stops. Then no sound kalapas. Right? So even while we are sitting still or standing still, these two kalapas, upper ones, arise. But still we have to consider breathing. Since breathing continuously happens, these 3 and 4 also arises. However, when meditation has escalated to a higher level, mostly the chittaja lahuta ekadasaka kalapa arises. If we have a good meditation, these kalapas are arising in our body. Right? These kalapas are. But if someone is like sitting and thinking about something which happened in the past, he did this to me, I will punch him or I will accuse him. So these kalapas are happening. No doubt about that. Right? Then, as mentioned about, see, we may also say in appana chittas, without iddhivida, without arupa, excluding iddhivida and arupa, all the appana chitta seems to be producing these kalapas. Now, this is the categorization of kalapas and practically how we recognize. Some fundamentals were formulated. Now think, how do we apply this? Think about our lives. Now, at any given time, we'll be able to analyze what type of chittaja rupas are arising. For instance, while we are standing still, without making any movements, yes, first types of kalapa are arising in the body. Right? If it is a very good mind, kusala chitta, yes, lahutadi ekadasaka kalapa. If it is dosamula, surely them. But it doesn't mean that always kusala chitta is producing these kalapas. Seems like, but sometimes if the kusala chitta is weaker, maybe they may produce 8 aviniboga only. Right? I'm not in a position to exactly say such things. But anyway, we can make sure while we are not making any bodily movements, while we are not uttering words, only these kalapas are arising. But since we are breathing, 3 and 4 may also arise accordingly. Especially while our meditation has anapana meditation, for instance, has developed, the breathing that we do is saddha lahutadi dwadasaka kalapa. Then while we are making bodily movements, what type of rupa arises? Second rupas, kaya with kaya viññati, bodily intimation. If the mind is very pleasant, if you have good sila, or we have just awake from a good samadhi, emerge from a samadhi, yes, viññati, lahutadi, viññati with lahuta, kaya viññati with lahuta. Especially when we are doing walking meditation, with a pleasant mind, yes, this is happening. While we are walking, thinking about something unnecessary, unwholesome thoughts, yes, kaya viññatti navaka is arising. Even while we stretch our hands to take a cup or drink water or sweeping something, yes, these are arising. Then, while breathing, yes, while crying, laughing, hiccuping, snoring, yes, these are the kalapas which arise. Right? These are the kalapas which arise. Now think, someone said, you snored yesterday night. Who was sleeping with you? Then you yes, that is natural, it can happen. Then we can consider ultimately, it was not I who snored. It was the Saddha Nahutadi Dwadasaka or Saddha Navaka Kalapa has been arising. Mostly snoring, I feel like it should be this. It's very gross sound, right? So a different Kalapa have arisen. It's not a person who snored. It's just Kalapas happening due to conditions. So you can bring everything into ultimate explanations, right? While we are making deliberate sound, we are speaking, while for Instagram, I'm giving a speech. Yes, sound is produced by, arises in either of these two kalapas. If the mind is pleasant, if the mind is happier, yes, vaci viññatti saddha lahutadi terasa kalapa arises. When we are shouting at someone, we are angry at someone, yes, what type of kalapa is arising? Vaci viññatti saddha dasaka kalapa. So if someone blames you, they are angry at you, then okay, saddha lahuta, saddha vaci viññatti dasaka kalapa arose. Maybe the person would get more angry if you say like that, yes, right? But still, that's how to deal with such things, right? That's how to deal with such things. So likewise, we can bring all our life, right? What are the colors? Then while we are speaking, it's on not only the sound vaci viññatti kalapas arising, but also kaya viññatti are happening in our bodily movements while we utter the words. Now, for example, I am giving the lecture, standing, moving here and there, right? So these kalapas are happening. If I feel tired or lazy, surely it will shift to these kalapas. When my mind is elated, happy about doing a lecture, so these kalapas are arising. So likewise, if we can categorize them, because this is we don't need to normally categorize these kalapas in other rupas, because this is greatly related to our mind. So mind changes, the chittaja rupa, the type of rupas which arise changes. It affects the body. It affects our life, affects the body, affects our life. So therefore, it is very necessary that we segregate these chittaja kalapas and try to understand practically what they are. And to formulate, in order to do that, I formulated some fundamentals based on the knowledge of the doctrine, right? So these are the fundamentals that I would like to discuss. I hope you enjoyed it. Chittaja kalapas are the clusters of rupa produced by chitta and chetasikas. There are 8 types of such rupas, and they can be categorized into kalapas with vikara, kalapas with sound, kalapas with viññatti, and other kalapas, right? So next day we may talk about santati, the generations of chittaja santati, which is also a very important chapter to understand how the Theravadians have dealt with these chittaja rupas, and then the various capacities and various functions done by these chittaja rupas, which is also a very important lecture. How do we smile? What are the chittaja rupas that arise during our smiling, and what sort of chittas produce these smiles? While we are crying, while we are dancing, while we are singing. In the Theravada teachings, normally Buddha says singing is done by akusala chittas. But commentators have clearly mentioned and bringing a lot of evidences from the text. Yes, you can sing with kusala chitta. You can dance with kusala chitta. When is that? In order to pay respect to the Buddha. We do utter songs out of respect. Monks cannot do that, that's a different case. We utter songs for the Buddha. And there are incidences that people have uttered songs out of respect to the Buddha as a gesture to show the respect and were born in heavens. Sometimes we do dance in order to show that how as a gesture of respect. In Sri Lanka, there is something called a perahara, a function in which people do dance and show a way of showing the respect towards the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, especially the Buddha and his relics. So these are kusala type of actions. So it's not that all singing is akusala, all dancing is akusala, playing instruments is akusala. In Dhammasangini commentary we have something called saddadana. Saddadana is not just making a sound in front of the cheti. No, you have to make a sound with a pleasant tone. It is a music. It is a music. So likewise, we will go into explain the bodily actions. Another thing that is always happening due to the akusala chittas, emission of semen from the body. So that is another chittaja activity which has been discussed in the Kathavattu. Because when lustful thoughts come, certain changes happen in our body. So we have to scrutinize, we can scrutinize chittaja rupas with regard to the chittas they are produced by. So it's going to be a very interesting few lectures coming up. We'll be talking about chitta santatis and then certain capacities of chitta rupas. Then we move on to explain two viññati, which is also very important, two viññatis separately. Then we move on to talk about some very interesting topics such as how the mind and chitta rupas are working during a possession by a non-human, during dream, while dreaming, while making bodily movements in dream. So, and also some other instances where chitta rupas arise, and also how it happens in jhanas. So we are going to talk about some very interesting topics and how chitta rupas are related to the view of a doer, karaka ditti. And then we move on to talk about chitta related rupas, rupas related to chitta, and move on to utuja rupas. Yeah. So I hope you understood this point, and this also enables us to understand that due to our mind, certain rupas happen in the body, and this is a condition phenomenon. Conditionality is working here during this existence. Yes. So I give you the opportunity to ask the question. I think Dr. Ryan is here. So can you please take the forum?
Good morning.
Good morning. After some time. Yeah, long time.
Yeah. But I have a question. Can a single citta produce various types of citta kalapas?
You mean single chitta producing various types of chittaja kalapas?
Yes.
It seems yes. It seems yes. Because, for example, while we are making a bodily movement, for instance, for example, while I am moving my hand, so obviously viññati rupas are arising around this area where I am moving. At the same time, even at the root of my hair, chittaja rupas are happening. So this shows that surely not viññati is arising at the root of a hair while I am just moving my finger. It's not necessary at all. So it seems like one chitta is producing, while it is producing kalapas with viññati in a certain area, on other areas it produces without viññati.
But that is just the speculation, or is it mentioned anywhere?
No, it's just a speculation. It's just a speculation because it's not these chittaja rupas are not scrutinized in this way, Dr. Ryan. It's not that much detailedly talked. So one chitta causes chittaja rupas to happen in the entire body. That's what it says. But this question, like what type of kalapas can it produce accordingly, is not clearly mentioned. But then someone can also argue, while even I am making a finger movement, the entire body is affected by that, and all the chitta rupas are contributing to this incident. There is another way to consider about this. But personally, I feel it is not necessary. Then the question comes, because chittaja rupas, when chittaja rupas arise, chitta and body it seems like the chitta and body have a great connection with each other. So that's why it's arising, Chitta Rupasa is arising in the entire body. Even it is, the Chitta has no intention of any idea of the body even. So therefore the process is going on naturally. While we want to make a deliberate movement in a certain area, yes, our entire focus goes on to this area, and Chitta Rupas are behaving according to that, our intention. So at the same time, at the back of my body, in the back of areas, back in my back, and all these are also affected by Chitta at the same time. So seems like in such regard, Viññati and in some rupas, Viññati may arise, in some may not. Another point is, while we are uttering sounds, sound arises only in these areas normally. For example, if you think about the top, at the edge of my toe, still Chitta Rupas are arising while I am giving this speech. So it's very unlikely that sound Rupas may arise there. It's mostly that the sound Rupas are arising here. So the doctrine says Chittaja Rupas arise in the entire body at every mind moment. We have information for that. Even at the foot of the root of the hair, we get Chittaja Rupas. So now think about the sound Kalapas. So it's obvious that it is arising around here. So therefore, it seems like most probably that one Chitta is producing different Chitta Rupa at the same time. Because while we are speaking, our body still remains still. The posture is maintained. So in order to maintain the posture, it should have Chittaja Kalapas with more Vayo Dhatu. Vayo Dhatu is higher in those Rupas. That's why the bodily posture is maintained. At the same time, with our intention to speak out, we are uttering words as well. Those Kalapas contain sound. So when we bring this information, it seems like one Chitta is producing different types of Kalapas.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu.
Thank you, Doctor. May I have the permission, Thiruvan Saranai? My question is actually was different, but then I will ask a connected question first. Because when it comes to Kayanupassana meditation, as well as Sampajanya Iriyapatha, we need to be conscious of the bodily movements. So that is actually the Iriyapatha Bhavana. So because of that, I was under the notion, I was thinking that especially Kaya Viññati happens only when the mind is focused towards one part of the body, and only that part the Kaya Viññati occurs, and even Vaci Viññati to some extent, because Vaci Viññati is anyway only in a certain part of the body only. It doesn't come from everywhere according to your own explanation, lectures done a little while ago. So that is my first question. Am I right?
You mean like when we are focused on saying some word, for example, while I am speaking, so Chittaja Rupas with Vaci Viññati do arise in this area according to the teachings. At the same time, our bodily posture, because we say later on that some Chittas are capable of holding the body, like posture, not letting it to break, like not holding the posture that was maintained by the previous consciousnesses. So that for that,
that is not what I am saying. That's not what I am saying, because the different types of Chitta Rupa simultaneously occurring is not an issue.
Okay, right.
That has to be accepted. So that is not what I am asking. But especially when it comes to Kaya Viññati, the Kaya Viññati Rupas, that Dasara Kalapa, or Dvadasara Kalapa, I don't remember the exact number, but
Navaka Kalapa.
That is controlled purely based on the concentration, because otherwise it becomes meaningless.
Yes. So it seems like that. You are correct. Now, for example, when I want to move my hand, so entire mind is focused on this hand. So even though I do some activity very fastly, still my attention has to be there. So even someone is running so fast, so every movement has to be deliberately done. So attention is what matters. And another point is, Mr. Kitsiri, is like that is one reason why vinyati is occurring there. Vinyati, now when we come to the lecture of vinyati, we shall explain. Now chitta rupas are happening, chitta wants to make a movement, chitta rupas are happening, and this chitta has a certain effect on these rupas. So these rupas do behave according to the chetana of that mind. So since we have a good focus at that moment, that can be also be one reason why vinyati is occurring there, because it's been in one sense controlled by the mind. It's not in the sense of a self. The rupa is behaving according to the mind, because there is a lot of connection between the mind and the chitta rupas at that moment. So our focus, it plays seems like it plays a huge role.
Yes, now we come back to the original question which I wanted to ask you, which is actually because I have not been able to consistently follow your lectures. So that is the reason why I have these questions even now. Especially when you are talking about Rūpa Santati. The Rūpa Santati from birth to death is maintained only by, it seems like it's only by Hadeva Rūpa. In the Panchavokara Bhava. I'm not talking about Arupa Loka or even Asanya Loka, but if you take the Panchavokara Bhava, the Adevata Rupa seems to be the only consistent one, whereas all the other Rupas that are occurring are like, having shorter durations. They just occur and disappear. But it's probably around that. And also, why I came to this thinking of that Vitarka was mainly because you said without the support of that heart-based Karmajarupa, some of the Chittajarupa can't even arise.
Yeah, it plays a huge role when you analyze the Chittaja Kammaja Kalapas like that, because one can exist without Chakku, obviously. Sota, Gana, even Jiva is not necessary. It says that every being in the Kama realm do have Kaya Pasada, but in the Brahma realm is not found. So Hadevattu seems to be in the Panchavokara realm the most important Rupa in that sense. At the same time, we also find something called Jivita Rupa, and we find it in Jivita Navaka Kalapas, which is always spread in the entire body, and we do not, the literature doesn't recognize when it has to arise for the first time. It seems like it is found from the birth. Anyway, there can be two opinions on this. So Jivita Navaka, Jivitindriya is founding every Kalapa, so still Jivitindriya Rupa can does the function without the Jivita Navakas till some time. So in terms of Kalapas, yes, because even without Bhava can exist, one can exist. Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jiva, Kaya, yes, they can exist in different realms. Jivita Navaka is the most the other important factor, because but Jivita Indriya Rupa is found in every Karmaja Kalapas. I think I brought a discussion on this, how without Jivita Navaka, like having Jivita Navaka and not having Jivita Navaka, and what are the arguments and counter arguments that can be brought against this, about this existence of Jivita Navaka. So yes, when we leave apart the Jivita Navaka out of the context, Hadevattu seems to be the most important in that sense. Because without Hadevattu, the consciousness cannot exist, and Bhavanga Chitta cannot exist, Chitta Rupas would not happen, and without all the other Kalapas, the life can still exist. But Jivita Navaka also do play a huge role here that we should not forget about, since there are, it's not clearly mentioned in the text. Out of the remaining, Hadevattu seems to be the most, Hadevattu Kalapa I would call, in terms of Kalapa, seems to be the most prominent Kalapa in our life. It's a good point.
Thank you very much for clearing that. And I thank you very, very much, and Theravada.
Thank you. And it is a point that I haven't also thought about before. So it's a very good point that Hadevatu seems to be the most important kalapa in that regard. Hello, sister. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your lecture. I would like to ask some question. So it seems by since last week that lesson that can somebody say that the Chitta Rūpa is just like a byproduct, but not the direct product of the Chitta?
Can.
Because it just arises, but it's not like directly caused by Chitta, isn't it?
Yes. The function of Chitta mainly is to know the object. That is the main function. That's why Chitta arises. Chitta Rupas are as a byproduct. It's necessary for the life. Without Chitta Rūpa, now Chitta and Rūpa are separate elements. So one of the ways how Chitta interacts or affects the Rūpa is through producing Chitta Rūpa. That is the one way. Another is it directly affects the Rūpa. We call it Pachajata Pachaya. In Patthana we study, when we come to the lessons of causality, we may study about this, how Chitta is affecting the entire body of the Rūpa. And another is by producing as a byproduct, Chitta Rūpas are produced and it affects the Rūpa. Especially you will see this in jhanas, how the Rūpa has been affected by this. So without Chitta Rūpas, the connection, but body to mind connection is different. We don't have much explanations on that. The best way out is Chitta is depending on a base. Base is a Rūpa and that base is connected to other Rūpas. So therefore there can be some connection between it, right? So still the question comes, how could a non-material Rūpa depend on a base, and what is this dependence means and all these? That can be philosophically highly questioned. The problem of interaction, which has been prevailing in philosophy for thousands of years, hundreds of years actually. So now Chitta Rūpa is an outcome of Chitta, as you said. But when we have intention to move our body, our intention is to lift the body. It's not that the Chitta thinks of arousing Chitta Rūpas. We never think when we are lifting the hand, may Chitta Rūpas arise and lift my body. No, it doesn't work like that. When we have the intention, Chitta Rūpas happen to arise and the body is moved. So it's a outcome, automatic outcome we can say, which is happening here. So, and that outcome is very necessary for the proper functioning of the life. If there was no Chitta Rūpas, the body would never act according to the mind. So it's very necessary in order to maintain this connection between mind and matter, and also for the body to behave according to the mind. So it's an outcome which is a very vital outcome required for the life to continue.
Thank you very much, Nandini.
Thank you. Since there were no other persons asking questions, I thought I will have another question again about the Chuti Chitta, or actually that last Chitta Viti. My question is really, it is a controversial area according to what we have already explained. It has been clearly said that there won't be Chitta Rupas produced by that particular Chitta Viti, or the 17 mind moments which are just before Chuti. But then, even today, or even in the past, it has been always said, when a person is having a good death, he has a pleasant appearance in his face. And when he has a probably not so good ending, and probably his facial appearance and sometimes even the bodily appearance look as if he's afraid or he's stressed. So these appearances, has it got anything to do with the Chitta Rupas that are produced at the last moment, or how do we explain that? That's my question.
His opinion that the last 17 mind moments does not produce Chittarupas is found in Anutika. The reference now, his argument point is, this is not accepted even by, is not appreciated, not rejected, appreciated by Paramatha Dipani, because he comes into this argument based on Sankhara Yamaka. Sankhara Yamaka explains about bodily Sankharas are Asasa Pasasa breathing. So according to the Sankhara Yamaka, no bodily Sankhara, it means no breathing or rupas of breathing passes away together with the Chuti Chitta. If no rupa is passing away together with Chuti Chitta, it's easy to conclude, because Chittarupas do not exist, like it do not exist after, is not produced after, do not produce after the death, right? So if Chittarupas are not passing with the Chuti Chitta, so it means Chittarupas have, not Chittarupas, is if Asasa Passasa, breathing, rupas of breathing does not pass with Chuti Chitta, it shows that they have not arisen with the 17th mind moment before death. Right? If it has arisen at least 17 mind moments before death, it should pass with the Chuti Chitta. If it doesn't pass, then the commentators assume then none of the last 17 mind moments are producing Asasa Passasa, that is breathing. So that was the argument. Then he concludes, if no Asasa Passasa is happening, no Chittarupa is happening. So that's why the Lady Shadows is not happy about this argument, the way of the methodology of the argument, how he created this argument. Because the premises is about no Asasa Passasa. So Asasa Passasa is a quite Olarika, gross Chittarupas out of the all. Because Chittarupas do arise even at the root of the hair all the time. Asasa Passasa is a gross Chittarupa that can be seen by others even. So according to, now in that sense, when someone is actually dying, not in a coma or anything, when someone is actually dying, according to Theravada teachings, after breathing has stopped, at least 17 mind moments. His breathing stops at least before 17 mind moments, according to Yamaka. Right? After breathing stops, at least 17 mind moments go before he passes. If breathing stops before, that's a different case. Because sometimes our breathing stops during our life even, and we may recover again. Right? So likewise, so if someone is dying, so that's another extra fundamental that we can formulate. So the Lady Shadow is of the opinion that is Yamaka is talking about breathing, not about all the Chittarupas. So it is not very appreciated if this absence of breathing Chittarupas are generalized to all the Chittarupas, and to formulate that no Chittarupa is happening due to the last 17 mind moments. So that is the argument. That is the discussion going on. Now the thing is, last moment death, yes, sometimes we see when the mind is pleasant, we normally say if a good karma comes forward and if he had a pleasant death, which any of us would prefer to have, if it is a pleasant death, it seems like the body is very pleasant. It can be seen from the outside as well. So according to, if you analyze this in terms of Dhamma point of view, obviously there is a very high possibility, unless there is a very good karma is acting on him, that his last moment mind was pleasant. So that has a great effect on his body. But that's not the only thing to consider, because sometimes karma also do play a huge role. Some people, even they are not happy much, the karma can make their body to be pleasant. Right? That is possible. So now assume that if Chitta is causing that appearance, does it need to be the last moment consciousness? Not necessarily, because the mind can be pleasant of a dying person for many hours, for many days, so for some time. So even if the Chittarupa stopped, even if the Anutika's argument is correct, even if the Chittarupas stopped 17 mind moments before death, still the previous Chittarupas which produce pleasant rupas has already affected the Utuja Rupa. So even the 17 mind moments, which is a very short period, has no chittaja rupas, still that pleasant appearance may exist after the person's death, because uttuja rupas have been affected by them. So therefore, there is no problem in bringing the Anutika's argument here, but as you said, yes, close to death, chitta, the nature of the chitta, to my understanding, do play a huge role in making the appearance to be pleasant and unpleasant at the death. Sometimes people may have a depressed death, that they are highly depressed, so it can be seen in their body. In some, yes, their body, the corpse can be seen very pleasant.
Thank you very much. That's excellent explanation.
Sorry.
Much merits to you, Bhante Theravada Saranai.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. And yes, so thank you for listening to the lecture. And it was about Chittaja Kalapa. So next week, we are going to talk about Chittaja Santati, which is also a very important lecture in order to see how Theravadians have dealt with the Chittaja Santatis in their doctrine. Okay, so wish you all the best. May this merit helps us to attain Nibbana, to gain Dhamma knowledge and attain Nibbana as soon as possible. And may this merit helps the sasana to sustain for a longer period. Buddha sasanang chirantittatu, Buddha sasanang chirantittatu, Buddha sasanang chirantittatu, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.